Hi everyone, I'm Robbie Napoli, director of Luke's, and today I'm so glad to be here talking with composer and conductor Adrian Sims. Adrian is a student composer at the University of Maryland, and he's already doing some amazing things. Primarily, he's a composer of instrumental music. He's published with the FJH Music Company, and he's been performed at the Midwest Clinic and has been selected for the Band World Top 100 list. He's also won numerous awards and competitions, including the Maryland Music Educators Association's Young Composer Project and Make Music Young Composers Contest. And he's also worked with ensembles across the state of Maryland, rehearsing and performing his music. And as a performer, Adrian's a gifted trombonist who plays in a range of ensembles from wind ensembles to orchestras and pits and jazz bands. So Adrian, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you.
Thanks for having me, Robbie.
Absolutely. So what have you been up to since the lockdown happened and everything's kind of changed?
Well, it's really interesting for composers because we really depend on ensembles to exist in order for us to write. So how do we go about that? It's really been challenging for me to figure out what to do. But luckily for me, I mean, I know it's not been the same for a lot of composers, but my creative inspiration has just gone way up, and I've just been able to write a lot of things for a lot of different things, and I'm really fortunate to have been able to just write a lot of stuff. And I've kind of gone into my introverted self and just kept writing and writing and writing. So it's really been not too bad overall. So a lot of good things have been happening writing wise.
That's really great. I'm glad to hear that. So kind of going backwards a little bit, what kind of got you into composing and into really music in general? Where did that start for you?
Well, it started in fourth grade. I was at some kind of outdoor marching band thing, and I, for whatever reason, didn't decide to play an instrument. And I was looking around at all these kids playing instruments, and I knew something just didn't feel right. I was like, how come all these kids get to do this and I don't? So I eventually got enrolled in band and everything. And I just loved music, and I picked it up really quickly and just learned all the different things. But it wasn't until around sixth grade that I started writing. For whatever the reason in my head, I was like, gee, well, how do people put down all these notes on the page? And so I think I opened up a Microsoft Word document and tried to draw the lines out. And I was like, well, clearly this isn't how they do it. So I did some research and found, okay, so there's this thing called notation software. And of course, the first thing I download is MuseScore. And that's really how I got started with notation software. So it just happened all because of the thought of, well, gee, how do people actually put this stuff down? I just don't think that's something that most people ordinarily think of. And so that's how I got started actually with the notation. And I was always interested in how, in all the complexities of the score, even from sixth grade, looking at a grade one piece. Like I was always online. Like I would bring, like when I would go to summer camps, I would bring scores on the bus and look at this instead of reading, read the scores. And it was always so exciting to look at how other composers did things. And I would try to imitate those things. And
That's really awesome.
yeah.
So from there, you went through high school and into college now at the University of Maryland. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences that you've had so far and some of the things that you've been able to get out of that?
Well, journey through high school was it was really helpful in getting to college, and just being able to bounce ideas off my band director and some of the other students and directors there as well was really great. And I also happened to get in touch with somebody who has been very pivotal in my career. Brian Balmages, my middle school band director, ended up sending some of my things to him, and like just sending them in. Maybe I could get some feedback or something. And so the first piece he ended up looking at was Contraption, and so we looked at that, and he got back to me, and we started moving forward with that. And next thing I knew, it was published. And as a high schooler, that was always one of my goals, was to be, gee, how do I become published? And so it was really great that ended up landing in my lap in high school.
That's really great. That's amazing. So moving from there, what kind of led you from high school going into University of Maryland, and what are some of the things that you've gotten to do there? that have kind of helped you grow as a musician
Yeah.
composer?
Well, going into the University of Maryland, it was I always, just for whatever reason, I knew that music was where I wanted to be. We all feel something about music that is just different. We just know that that's what we want to do. And so, long story short, I wound up at the University of Maryland. I really liked Dr. Gibson, who I study with, and some of the things that we do there is really just, of course, the lessons and getting our chance to hear our music by really high quality professional musicians groups that come through every year. Those are some of the greatest things that happen every year. Composition lessons are just not. It's not like an instrumental lesson. It's very much, I almost would say it's a cross between an instrumental lesson and a therapy session, because really what the teacher is trying to do is get inside your brain and find what are the blocks that are preventing you from writing further, and getting rid of those things so that you can then just let your inspiration flow freely. So those are some of the great things about me studying with Gibson and at the University of Maryland.
That's really great. I love that. So as you're going from in your band classes and learning to write from what you're playing and what you're hearing and that sort of thing, what led you to start writing things for choir? I know this is kind of a relatively new area for you in terms of composing. Is that right?
I would agree, and it's just I'm just thinking, why don't I try something new? Why don't I do something that that I don't ordinarily do? And that often just new inspiration comes from doing things that you haven't done before. And I've also found that the ideas that I have manifest differently in different types of pieces, or for different pieces for different ensembles. The piece "Awaken" for choir, I also recently did a version for band, and the band version's okay, but it works so well for choir that when you take it to band, you have to do some things to make it feel a little bit more fleshed out. It doesn't just translate directly.
Sure.
And
Right.
so I really enjoyed writing for choir, and I feel like it inspires different ideas, and it really opens up your musical palette to look into another genre or a different ensemble type.
Sure. Yeah. And so if I remember right, this is Awaken is your second piece that you've written for choir, is that right?
Right.
So what sorts of things did you learn from the first experience with writing for choir that you maybe took into working with Awaken?
Well, I learned that it might be nice to have words. And I also just, the first piece had a lot of jumps in it, a lot of crazy leaps that
Okay.
instrumentalists would usually have no problem. And not that choir people would have a problem doing it, but it's just what's idiomatic writing for the voice, right?
Right.
The other piece had good voicing, but what really makes sense in terms of ranges, what ranges sound good, and a lot of things that composers learn, especially as we become more advanced, is okay, well, so this instrument has this register, and not just what registers sound good and what's louder and what's softer, but how am I going to use this specific register to achieve a specific sound?
Right.
And so a lower register in a voice you might use to create a deeper and darker sound, where in a higher register and a bass might create a more intense sound. And it could sing the same note as a soprano, but a soprano is going to sound so much lighter, and just it's not going to have, it could still have intensity, but it's not going to have the same timbre and sound quality to it. So I think that all these different compositional things start to work themselves in as you get deeper into it.
Definitely, definitely. I know we've gotten to read a little bit, and some of our audience has gotten to read some of this too, with the first virtual video we released for Awaken, as we kind of started getting into a lot of the conversations on race and politics and things like that that have been happening recently. Could you talk a little bit, just about the context of Awaken? I know it wasn't necessarily written for that cause to start with, but maybe talk about some of the inspiration that started the piece off, and maybe how it's kind of morphed into, or not morphed into, other things.
Right. Well, so it was the template for the Make Music contest this year, and so they put out the poem "On the Road to the Contagious Hospital," that by William Carlos Williams. So I was like, okay, this is the poem I'm going to do, and that was the inspiration to start the piece. And it's about the road to the contagious hospital. The flowers are dead, and through all that process, everything begins to start to awaken and have more life flown into it. The piece also starts to breathe more life into it as it goes on. I think the same thing could be said in our world, right? We're starting to see more of the injustices that are happening. We're starting to awaken to what's happening in our world, and we're going to do our best to bring justice to everything that's going on right now. That's what it means to me in the context of the current situation that way.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really great. So one of Luke's responses to the COVID-19 crisis obviously has been the Songs from Home series that we're a part of right now. But I know you also have worked on some of your own projects as a response to the situation, including both the consortium and some other projects as well. Could you tell us a little bit about those?
Another project that I've been asked to work on is a wonderful group of directors in Minnesota has put out a consortium for Black American composers. I was fortunate to be selected as one of the composers for that. They've given us the opportunity to possibly reflect on the Black American experience in the United States. And so, well, what I've chosen to do is I didn't do that exactly. I took a different approach. I'm like, how can I uplift my community? And so what I've done is I've taken inspiration from a famous inventor who may not be well known to everybody, but certainly is an instrumental part in a lot of things, Lewis Latimer. And he did a lot of work on the light bulb with Thomas Edison. Everybody knows Thomas Edison, and I'm sure many people know Lewis Latimer, but I just don't think his name is quite as big as he deserves. And so just before this interview was working on the piece. It's called Incandescence. It just kind of celebrates the life of Lewis Latimer and his contributions and his ingenuity in his work on the light bulb, among other things.
On a completely different note, one of the things that we like to do a lot when we interview our singers or other musicians or composers or whoever is we ask really just kind of weird off-the-wall questions. So my question for you is dinosaurs or puppies, and why? No context, just choose one of the two.
Well, see, it's hard because, well, I have a dog, so I love puppies.
Right.
I don't have a dinosaur, but I think if I could, I probably would pick dinosaurs, because if that means I could see a dinosaur, I would take it.
That's fair. That's a totally fair choice. I think the first time I was asked that, I think my first reaction was dinosaurs too. Cool.
It doesn't eat me.
Exactly. Maybe we'll go with a herbivore, and then we'll be okay. So as we're kind of closing out things, what do you have any sort of advice for other aspiring and upcoming composers or conductors, singers, other musicians?
The first best piece of advice I could give is just be yourself, because there's so many people out here that are trying to be the best at this and the best at that, and maybe not necessarily being the most genuine to themselves, and that's not what's going to attract attention to you. You have to be who you are, right? Whatever your personality is, whatever that is, you have to be you. I would say the second piece of advice I would give is find a mentor or mentors. Find people that are doing what you're doing, that you're like, I want to do what they're doing, and connect with them. That's just about the most invaluable resource that you can find, is somebody who will work with you to help you become the best at what you do, to become as good at what you do as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I can absolutely echo both of those sentiments. And they almost kind of come hand in hand too, because the moment that you start letting yourself be who you are is also the moment that you start running into circles of people who are just like you, who want to do the same things that you want to do.
Exactly.
Well, Adrian, thank you so much for joining us and talking with us a little about your life and your piece. We're really excited to share a remastered video and recording on YouTube as part of the Songs from Home series.
Thank you so much, Robbie.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are watching, be sure to watch our video for Awaken and check out some of our other videos and interviews as part of the Songs from Home series. If you'd like to learn more about Luke's and what we're up to, you can check us out at choirlukes.com. If you'd like to find out more about some of Adrian's work and his consortiums and projects, you can check him out at adrianbsims.com. So Adrian, thank you again so much for joining me and for giving us your time today.
Thank you. This has been great.